All right, hey everyone. Jared Napolitano, JNAP here, marketing advocate for the PC. I'm going to do a stream here. We've had some people mention in different places, more game review streams, basically where we grab the replay from play.starwarsccg.org, the online platform for Star Wars CCG, in addition to Holotable, but most players are using GEMP now. So we can use the replays and kind of go over how a game played out to kind of talk through, excuse me, different strategy that was played in the game and go from there and if attempt to help people get better if they're new or returning coming back to the game. So hopefully these streams are helpful. I know Chris Goglin had a series for a long time. He hasn't done it recently, but hopefully he brings it back, but I can't speak to exactly when or how much his game review series, which are usually used to focus on the online championship series. But this is I have a few replays for all of the Jedi sealed. If you're just watching this video out of left field for Star Wars CCG, you're probably like, what is all the Jedi? Basically a sealed format on again on GEMP, so we can do sealed formats even though we have these scarce resources of this card game that is out of print for 21 years now, 22 years. So you basically get two booster packs of every expansion release. So I think there's 11, so it's 22 packs. And maybe even more. You get 2 of each Reflections 2, Reflections 3, and then everything. Premiere, New Hope, Hoth, Special Edition, all the way through to Theed Palace. So you get all these packs, you crack them open, you build a deck, use your judgment on what cards are good. You play 40 card decks, and I have up here the forum, so if you're curious about all the details exactly, if you go to forum.starwarsccg.org, you go down here to the GEMP section, GEMP Online Play. There is format rules right at the top, all the Jedi sealed. So you click on this, and this explains it. You get 2 of each booster pack produced. You also get a couple fixed cards, just a few. 2 starting interrupts from Jabba's Palace, Twilight Advisor, and the Signal. And you also get 1 system and 1 site from a pool. I think these are all like battlegrounds, like 2 icons for you, 1 icon for the opponent locations. And then halfway through the format, because there's a few that go on GEMP, they do these sealed formats. They're usually maybe about a month after 2 weeks in, you get another whole round of 1 booster, another 11, 12 booster packs, and you can supplement, update your deck. And then once the league's done, you can't play that deck anymore. You could screenshot it and kind of build it manually, but the league, the sealed formats on GEMP, they're kind of tied to a league. Oh yeah, here's the pools. Yeah, these are pretty much all 2-1s. So that's the format. It was conceived by IdeaTrack, user handle. Just like, hey, why don't we do this? So I think I have to make myself a little smaller. So maybe just real quick before we jump in, I have 4 replays from my recent All the Jedi Sealed League, which was for our Coruscant League, which is primarily people in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. People can still sign up. But the good thing about All the Jedi, too, is that if you're a new or returning player, none of these are virtual cards. These are cards that if you played the game in 1999, or, well, maybe not all that, maybe like 2001, 2002, 2003. Let's say you're gone for 20 years, just coming back, you should probably recognize these cards. So I think I have a total of, I don't know, it might be like 150, 160 cards, whatever it maths out to. And you have to cut that down to your 40 best cards, I would say. So I think the general standard format in building these decks, if you're like, hey, I like this format, it's fun, I keep losing, I want to know, what am I doing? Is it the deck construction or is it the gameplay? And there have been a couple of these types of things. Goglin did one on his channel, I think Tiberius2187 is his Twitch. I did one on like how to play Star Wars CCG and use All the Jedi as a base on the YouTube channel that you're probably watching this on. And Andy Talaga did one, I think, kind of talking through his experience on All the Jedi. I think that might be available to maybe the Board Matt YouTube channel, or it might be Andy's personal one. I'm not sure, but maybe just search All of the Jedi Star Wars CCG would be my suggestion. But this was the dark deck I came up with. This is after Series 2, so I had a couple extra cards that went in. So usually it's like 5, 6, 7 locations, locations that usually want a 2-0, like the ice planes that you start. So you get a boost to give yourself a couple icons and not give any to your opponent. Kashik's a good system because it's fortune +1. You want systems that you can do 2 damage ideally. And of course, to some extent, you're at the whim of the cards that you pull. Sometimes you get good ones, sometimes you get mediocre ones, sometimes you get bad ones. But I think it is possible to an extent that if you're a good player with bad pulls, you can do well, or vice versa. I think there's enough chance in this game that I don't think every game is predetermined by what packs you pulled in this format, but there is variance, no doubt. Um, so I was, I mean, just a handful of effects, some helpful interrupts, like stuff like limited resources is really powerful in this format because everything's like shrunk down. You have 40 card reserve decks. Um, towards the end of the game, it's a really powerful card to make your opponent lose 4 force. Any cards that you can just play, like used interrupts that are Destiny 5 or Destiny 6, very powerful, especially ones that can like Omnibox or Bith Shuffle that wreck your opponent's tracking ability of tracking around Destinies. Defensive Fire is kind of a tactful card, especially in conjunction with limited resources. You just randomly take a card from your opponent's hand. It's mediocre Destiny at 3. Bubo is good. This guy can eat lots of weak characters. If basically any character that's ability 3 or power 3 or less and ability 4 or less, if he selects them for an attack, he just defeats them. Creatures are not very powerful or not very popular in a lot of formats, but in all the Jedi, a couple of them aren't too bad. And then I just have, a couple permanent weapons are good, like P60. Any character that's ability 4 is generally good, especially ones with good deploy forfeit ratios, like Newt Gunray, deploy 3, forfeit 6, power 3, ability 4, Destiny 3. He's a really good card for this format, especially, one of the later if he came out in Coruscant. And then I got Imperial Rest Order, which is great because I can pull my docking bays, which enables me to get some locations out to, potentially force drain with or get some activation. But it also gives all my Imperials forfeit +2, like Lieutenant Cabell, who becomes a deploy 2, forfeit 6. So in this deck, and same thing with like all these guys, they're like ability 2, so you can pair 2 of them up. You draw Battle Destiny, and they have pretty good forfeit rather. So I start Twilight Advisor, Imperial Rest Order, Ice Plains, and then Battle Order can be really good, especially one of the rules of the format is once per game you can deploy from your reserve deck a battleground location. So depending on what's in your opening hand, like I'll probably deploy like Kashyyyk from reserve deck, and then try to get one of the ships there. Ships that can hold pilots are good. Like this is only a deploy 1 ship from Thebe, but it can take 2 pilots, and it has a permanent pilot. Oh no, I take that back. It does not have a permanent pilot. Interesting. But it can be battled because it just has this droid icon, which means it occupies. Well, that's weird. It has a permanent pilot but doesn't have an ability. So, but if you throw like 2 of these ability 2 pilots, okay, now you're getting Battle Destiny. It has no hyperdrive, so that's the drawback with it. So wherever you put it, it's stuck. It can't like run away. But the hope is that I get like one of these ships, and one of the main reasons I'm doing this stream, because I think that all the Jedi is neat in that it teaches you a lot of like basic fundamentals of the game that are really easy to overlook as the card pools get really expansive and as you start building decks and open era nowadays. There's tons and tons of cards. We have like 3,500 cards just about that you can play from, and then towards the end of the Decipher era you had like 25 or so, 2,500. But as we'll go through some of these game streams, I'm not an expert player, but I have a lot of games under my belt. I played in the old school days, and I play recently, and I play retro formats. I'll play this sealed format. I don't play a lot of others, but this sealed format's really cool because you can get some pretty cool cards, and at the same time you use a lot of cards that you might not normally use. Like this Garduel of the Hutt, I would never put this card in a deck, but it's a way to retrieve force that might work. And it's ability 3, not a Destiny. I might take. I think it's a her actually. Garduel of the Hutt. I'm not sure. Anywho, but like Janus Egregious is really good. Ability 4, you can cycle cards once per. You can use a force to place cards. So that's where you can take some high Destiny cards, like It's Worse, or shut them up or shut them down, which I've used to cancel Back to Tank in this league. Because Back to Tank's a pretty good card, but pretty much any Destiny 6 just about that has some utility is worth playing. Because once you draw it, or if you retrieve it, like with First Strike, which allows you to retrieve every time you initiate battle, you ideally can track it around and then draw it when you kind of need to, and you could really do some devastating. Same thing with this 6. But this one actually has some use in reducing deploy for your pilots when they deploy aboard any capital starships, or any of these capital starships, or gives the starships immunity to attrition as well. And again, in this format, there's not a lot of high destinies that are being drawn and whatnot. So we can get in. I just talked a lot about the dark deck, and a lot of the stuff will apply to my light deck, and just it depends on what you got. Look at your starting interrupts. Like this, I happen to get a 2-0 Tatooine location, and this is a good location, and I got a Jedi, so I'm playing those 2 with careful planning, and I can pull Ben Kenobi with the city outskirts once per game may deploy Jedi. Because that's like one of the engines I kind of relied on. And then a lot of characters that are pilots. Pilots are important because then you can put them on these ships like Y-Wings, which can hold 2 pilots each. Only deploy 1. Very cheap to deploy, which is big in this format. Cheap to deploy, high forfeit, ability 2, or like ability 4 or whatever are good too. Like Arcona in a format that your opponent might not have all the counters can be really strong. Or you can just keep running away from battles. And Revolution, like all sorts of fun stuff. Anger, Fear, Aggression. You just insert in your opponent's reserve deck. When it comes to the top, they lose 4 unless they battle. And sometimes you might do that like early on in the game before you even have any cards out that can possibly be battled. Blue Milk is a card I like because late game your opponent can activate all but 1 force. And then as you're about to go, maybe they activate all but 1 and then they're about to battle you. But then you force them to activate a force. And now they can't draw Battle Destiny. So that means that they can't, you're going to have no attrition even if they do battle, and they might have lower power than they were expecting. Control Tunnel Vision can help find a card. It can also cancel a force drain of 2 or 3. The trade-off is it's only Destiny 1, but that's okay. Back to tank can return the characters, and some evasion, like just generally like good cards. This card's in here. It's a like I was talking about before. It's a 5 Destiny that you can just cycle, and you can track it around. And it's sometimes in this format, like you really want to draw a Destiny 5, so you can take out 2 of your opponent's characters if they're like 2 characters that are forfeit 5 each, or forfeit 4 each rather. Head Empty is good because it forces your opponent to pay 2 extra force for each male Imperial, and that can really add up. Really helpful kind of late game. But we'll get into some of this stuff. But those are the decks I put together for dark and light for this stretch run. Let me make my camera a little smaller here. I probably should update this this description since we're doing something a little different. Game review. We'll call it a tutorial. I would expect this to be a little more appealing to, or a lot more appealing probably, new and returning players. But yeah, definitely open to feedback. I'll try to put some useful links in the description here. All right, so this is the replay. It's starting. It's just telling us special rule for the game. As I mentioned before, once per game, you could deploy a unique battleground not already on table. That means you can't deploy, for one reason or another, the diamond sites from Special Edition. So this was a game in Series 2 I played against Dan. Dan, great guy, a huge volunteer for the PC. Host Holo Theater, gives me a chance to plug Holo Theater every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. It used to be Wednesdays at 9, but this season started a couple months ago. So he's playing Ice Plains, which is very popular. I get to verify right off the bat. He has an interesting... He's got Prepared Defenses, which is a good card to have because it allows you to start 3 starting effects, which not everyone gets. One of them pulls docking bays. One of them gets activation at docking bays at mobilization points. So that's a pretty good thing for him. He can get a lot of force effectively, efficiently, and not give away a lot of force. And this card makes all my aliens deploy +1 on Tatooine, +2 if non-unique, which will impact an Emp. And of course I'm playing 2 Tatooine sites. So, and then this, he must have got like at least 2 shields to be worth the slot, because a lot of people might not use that in this format, because if you don't get any good shields, it's not worth playing. But if he has 2 or 3 shields, he kind of gets like extra cards basically in his deck above the 40. So he deploys from reserve deck Junland Waste, and a docking bay with his effect, begin landing with my troops. Once per turn, may deploy docking bay. Draws, puts out Fondor. All these locations are very good. Just generally 2-1, and your opponent force drains -1 because they're not big liabilities then. So I'm going to do my turn. I just throw Anger, Fear, Aggression in, and he's activating 8. He's got 21 cards in reserve deck. That card's probably going to pop in a turn or 2. Deploy effectively it's a grabber, so I can grab any annoying used interrupt that he plays. I whiff on my battleground. Oh, no, I don't. I get the Dune Sea out, which is pretty good because my opponent needs... Like, all this little stuff adds up in this format. Like, your opponent needs ability 6. That can often be, like, 3 characters. So I put Ben Kenobi out. Just figure he's got immunity to attrition less than 5. And I'm going to put Ephraim Lajehi, who's got great stats, deploy 2, forfeit 5. So even if he comes down, battles, draws a 5, I could just lose him and revive Ben. And there's not going to be a lot of lightsabers in this format. Although Dan has, I think he had Maul with double-bladed lightsaber, which is 2 swings. He had some pretty decent pulls. But I think to some extent everyone has good. Even there's a lot of like good uncommons and commons that people get. Like limited resources, for example, is huge. All right, so then he just goes Darth Maul here, and he figures I'm going to go Jundland Waste and drain him for 2 each turn. He's only draining me for 1 over here, which is pretty good play, especially because I can't really attack him at all. But actually, in retrospect, like it's kind of like redundant that I need an ability greater than 4 to be present there, to have my guys not blanked. But then I also need ability 6 to drain for 2. But he doesn't really have a better place to go. And he probably, if he deploys in front of me here, he probably assumes every deck has got like half the deck is characters. It's probably like 18-ish characters in every deck. So it probably makes sense just to get the damage going. He only costs 6 because he's going to Tatooine. The thing is that he has that Maul from Deep Palace, which is just so good that he kind of sacrificed the ability to use him. But it makes sense. All right, so he loses Lieutenant Suba from hand. And I'm just going to go Tantive here. Figure I go to space if and when battle order comes out or battle plan, which probably not, but it's just like a location I could drain at. And eventually even just chipping away, drain one, and just be kind of efficient about it. So Anger Fear pops, but he has 2 different places he can actually battle me at. Braun Burrs is cool because he draws Battle Destiny out of zone. But that's where like part of this format's really neat in that you're figuring out like what's a good card or like relatively what's a good card and what's a bad card. But also with 40 cards in your deck, you kind of realize like every card you deploy, if it's not helpful, it's basically like losing a card. So this is interesting that he went like I don't know why he did this. Not to pick on Dan, but like he deploys the weapon on reuse, but he can't fire it. So deploying your smuggler, so he spent 2 force to deploy it, but he can't fire it on my turn. So it would have been better for him just to hold it. And okay, maybe he deploys it next turn. Or maybe what might happen, all these guys are 4 for 3. Like, I could come down and with maybe an EPP, like I could, it's not out of the question that I clear all 3 of his guys in my turn, and then he deployed that weapon for no reason, and it's just a waste of a card. So like, that's like one of the many ways that this format's kind of neat, where you realize like, don't like throw away cards basically. And the verifies are always helpful. You can kind of see what is planning to come around. So now he loses the 4 because he doesn't want to battle into. Well, he can't. He doesn't have the force to battle into me. I think it might have been better. Doesn't this make it forfeit 0? Yeah, target hit and forfeit 0. So it almost would have been better if you kind of took the risk, didn't deploy Bosk, instead battled and fired and hit him. So he would have been forfeit 0. Shock is power 4, so he would have been power 7 to 7. If he draws a 5, which isn't very likely, he kills both my characters. If he draws like higher than me, and he hits Ephraim, he forces a couple battle damage. Okay, I think what he did here is kind of like the worst of both worlds, where he didn't really get rid of anybody, and he kind of deployed an extra card. But this is fun. It's a chill format. But I just think it offers some good like helpful points. So he loses Dr. Vaz and Ponda Baba, probably one of his strongest cards, especially because he could put the gun on him. I'm just going to go Braun Burst here for only 3 force, add another drain of 1. He's pretty safe here. The opponent needs to have 6 ability. And I'm just going to put Pops here for more power and forfeit, just to soak up and just try to chip away at him, because, my strategy here is I can't, if I lose this site, I'm probably going to lose the game, because then he's going to be draining for 2 and 2. So I kind of need to be out in front and try to force him to lose characters. Me drawing a 4 here is big because all these characters only have forfeit 3. So that means he's got to lose 2 characters. He only has 2 cards in hand, so the odds are he doesn't really have many useful things. He might have like another character, maybe 2. But I just want to, worst case scenario, I could lose both my characters and revive 1. Both my scrubs, we'll call them. But I'm just going to lose Ephraim and then revive him. Ephraim Lejehi. So he's back. And, Dan's a little behind here now. So I'm now threatening 2. He's threatening 2. In this format, it's pretty fun to kind of just watch your hand, your reserve deck, compare it to your opponent. You're constantly kind of seeing, like, how much damage am I forcing? How much damage is my opponent forcing? how many cards are in my hand, what are the odds. So his destinies are pretty bad there. I think he had a couple of 4s, but a lot of like 1s and 2s, which is fairly standard. All right, so here comes Ghana Gimort, who's very helpful when you put him next to, bumps the activation a little bit because he has that 1 text, but I know, yeah, it went away because he's not at the same adjacent side as an alien. If your force activation, force generation plus X, where X equals number of aliens at same and adjacent. So Braun bumped it. All right, so I'm just gonna get a couple drains through here. Just keep chipping away. 3. He's now threatening 2 and 2, so he's technically up on me. Ghana, like I said, would be really useful because you can use the text may lose 1 force to cancel force drain at adjacent site. If your opponent's about to drain you for 2, he basically reduces it. All right, so I don't want to let him get that drain at 2 through, and I got a bunch of these scrubs in here, so I'm just gonna go Tyree, Dak. I think I moved 1 more. No, I put an empty there, so I have to pay 2 extra force because of his name is Anakin. 9 unique aliens deploy +2. I'm just gonna battle. If I draw a 4 here, everybody dies for his team. His players, which I do. Even if I drew a 1, at least I get rid of one of them, and I could probably lose Dak. He's not gonna. It's very. I don't think he has any 6s, and forfeit 5 can cover it. So, oh no, that was my. Oops, that was my careful planning destiny. Oops. So I activated 4 force, and then I drew a 0, which is bad. But it's not the worst case scenario because I can. Yeah, he only draws a 2, so Dak just covers, and now I still have two characters there who can draw Battle Destiny. One of them could be forfeit 0 if he shoots and hits, so I'm going to move over some reinforcements here, and I really need to draw some cards so I can actually present somewhat of a threat for his next turn. Let me speed this up a little bit. Which is kind of the cool thing about these replays is we can go fast when it needs to. So I move Pops over, draw a few cards. Got my Blue Milk, which can come in handy. Lose a couple cards off the top. Prophetess is pretty good because he can now has a retrieval engine, but his destinies are really bad, so he's only going to kill 1 of my characters. Well, I take that back. He can kill 2 if he hits, but he drews the 1, so he misses, which is unfortunate for him. And he draws a 2, so he is going to get rid of 1 of my characters due to attrition. And I'm going to get rid of one of his characters because I have 3 attrition he needs to satisfy, and he gets a force back because Prophetess correctly, good old premier card, correctly predicted the winner of the battle. And he's going to draw some more, so I'm only up 4 cards face down. We have the same amount of cards in hand. I'm about to be up 7 because I have 16 and 4. He's going to have 9 and 4. Yeah. All right, so I just see my destiny is like, what are the odds that I'm going to draw a 0? Play my the signal to pull an effect, get the back to tank out, so now I can keep bringing my characters back from the dead, basically. And I'm going to reinforce the Tanev with Red Leader, just to make sure he doesn't knock me out of space there. He's going to play the 5, which he can track then, which again is, anytime you see the, so he knows that this card right here is a 5, which would be good for him to draw, because I have 2 forfeit 4 pilots here. He can get rid of both of them, and he's probably going to hope that I draw. But he doesn't realize I have Blue Milk, so now he's coming here with a character. I'm going to make Blue Milk, so now he has to, I'm going to force him to activate a force, which means he loses the 5, and the destiny's going to be lower. First strike comes out, which is good for him. Gets a 2-force swing here with I have to lose a force. He retrieves a force. He's also probably, oh, he draws a 5. I think we tie here. So there is no winner, so Prophetess doesn't kick in. What is it if she's wrong? You got to lose a force, yeah. So we're both at 7. Oh no, he has to lose if it's a tie. That's unfortunate. I'm just going to throw Pops into the back to tank. So I think from here, it's kind of he could maybe switch his characters, because Maul would be trouble. He'd have to then move in front of me with like Ben Kenobi, who he could then duel, presumably. But it just becomes a race ultimately, and I'm going to pick character up and eventually went out. So yeah, sometimes like these drains of 1s, they add up, they're good. Ideally you want drains of 2, but and that's where, again, it's important not to have too many locations, if any, that become liabilities. He didn't have any here, but something to keep in mind. All right, let's go to the next game. All right, so this is versus Greg Shaw. Very, very, very good player. One of the most accomplished players ever. Known Greg for a really long time. Going back to like 2000, probably 2001. So this was a really good close game. So right off the bat, he misses on his battleground, so I get to verify it's all counter assault, all sorts of fun stuff. So let me speed this up a little bit. So this is my same light deck. I hope I have a mix. Here, let me just check real quick. This one I'm dark, and this is my deck. Okay, all right. So I got one more after this, which on the other side of the force. All right. So we both did the careful planning / combat readiness to get basically 2 starting locations. I just tossed anger, fear, aggression out. Then I do probably a bad thing, and I should just probably draw here. But now, if you were to activate the anger, fear, he can get around losing the 4. When I have a barrier, I have a careful planning. And with him only activating 6 force, he can only put so much down, which is right here, Lord Sidious, or Darth Sidious. But he doesn't have enough force to also battle, so Taz will survive that turn. But he blocks the Drain 2, which is good for him. Alright, so I'm just going to go to space here, try to get to space before he does. And I'm just going to rely on my barrier. I don't want to give up the Drain here. I figure... Or no, I save force for it to trap. That's what I have. So Snuva comes down. I'm just going to... At this point, I'm not going to burn the barrier. I'm just going to say, alright, I'm going to use the It's a Trap. He initiates battle. First, I'm going to do careful plan to activate some force. And I only draw 1. So that's a bummer. And then I'm going to play It's a Trap. So I basically spend 3 force, burn a card, as it's the Lost Interrupt, to stop a Drain at 2, and just buy some time. Make him commit resources, which again is another like valuable, like all these traits of like get your opponent to commit every card they're deploying, these cards out of their deck, cards that they can't deploy other locations. So I drain him for 2. He loses 2 Destiny 5s off the top, Undercover and Twilight Advisor. I'm going to put a little enforcement up in space. Still have the barrier, but I don't want to only be reliable on that. Two pilots in case he draws a 5. I don't lose my ship. Going to move the Gran over there, who will enable me to retrieve a force anytime opponent initiates battle at same or adjacent site. And I'm going to run away with Taz and just say, okay, you can have the Drain 2. Like I said, this is Fall of the Legend, which is an awesome card for this format because you could just play it as a use interrupt and track it around, unless your opponent like grabs it or senses it, which isn't super likely. Alright, so Anger, Fear, Aggression pops, which means he has to initiate battle or he loses 4 force. He comes down with Ghana, and I'm going to barrier Ghana, knowing he only has 6 more force, but he does have 9 cards in hand, so if he had another 2 characters, he could probably deploy and get around the force loss, which I think is what... No, he doesn't do that, so he must not have a lot of characters. And definitely, he loses Jaquil, Alter, Voyeur. Voyeur and Visor Vision are cards I really like, but it's hard to cycle them in this format. So, I mean, if you can play it twice in the game, you're basically making... And not a lot of players aren't playing multiple interrupts, usually. All right, so I play the Signal to go grab the back to tank, figure I could start recurring my characters, and just keep trying to drain this. You know, to some extent, if you're draining for 2, your opponent's draining for 2, and and you're up in life force, which I think in this case I am 24, barely, not by much. So I'm just going to get the 0 out of my reserve deck so I don't draw it at a time when I don't want to, which you could even make a case sometimes that doesn't make sense. It's like almost better that it's a life force that you could lose rather than just putting it out. So I'm just going to run away, go in front of Darth Sidious. Now I don't have any like evasion. I don't have any barriers. I don't have any It's a Traps. I only have like 6 forfeit here, which isn't a lot. And he's going to come down here with Destroyer Droid. Chalk, who's power 4. We just saw him in the last game. And an ATST. So he's now got me outpowered by a lot. At least I get a force back. Of course, it's the 0. I could take it in the hand. He's going to fire here. All he has to do is draw 1, and he hits. And it's going to make me lose a force. So this looks pretty bad. It's a pretty bad battle. But I am up. Maybe before we get to the battle damage, I'm at 20. Let's say 20, 25, and he's at 21. So I'm up 4, but I'm definitely taking overflow in this battle. So he only draws a 2, and I think I draw somewhat decent, if I recall correctly, which is huge, because if I draw like a 1, I'm in big trouble. Yeah, 3. All right, so it's a 7. Both my characters are forfeit 3, so that means I got to peel 5, which basically gives him a slight edge now. I could put Tawz into the back to tank. I mean, the game, obviously, as many people know, there's a lot of math. It's a lot of math. Math is important, especially when you're trying to sketch out how the game's going to go, and taking risks, calculated risks of betting what's in your opponent's hand, how much force are they activating, what are they likely to do. You know, like counter assault, I saw that early in the game. As long as I know he doesn't have 1 force, I don't have to worry about him playing that. Knowing what cards do, knowing what potential cards exist, all those types of things add up. But I'm trying to. I know there's a few examples of like. I shouldn't say a few. There's lots of examples of how this works. So now I have Head Empty, which means if he's going to come and attack me, he's going to have a hard time doing it with Imperials, which a lot of characters are. I got to control. Now I have a barrier, so now I have a way to keep my characters alive. And I think I'm. So at this point, I mean, this game is really close. So this was probably a waste of a barrier. Like, what was I afraid of Fossek doing? He wasn't going to battle me with him. I'd be more afraid of someone else. But he puts undercover to block the drain. So he's now dedicating 2 cards to block a drain. So in 2 turns, it'll kind of break even. If we go 3 more turns, it won't. Like, this would have been better to barrier this guy and get him stuck here. And then I could battle into him. And so I'm up 3 total force here. I guess as he's dedicating these cards, and it's like the math. Like every card you kind of put on the table, you kind of have to think, is this worth it for the rest of the game? But right now he is starting to turn a 2. Now it comes a 1, which of course he didn't know I had a projection of Skywalker. But now he's forcing 4. I'm only forcing 2. So that favors him, I think, right? If this can go enough turns. I'm just going to cycle my 6. And I can track that around in case there's a battle. But I'm going to move Tawz, because she's ability 4. So, I'm just trying to find ways to add damage. And I'm going to drain at the Dune Sea, drain at Kashyyyk for 2. And I draw some characters that I need, including 2 pretty strong ones. But I'm going to eat 4 damage here. So it's like now it's a matter of what cards are really going to help me in this game. And so cards in hand obviously have more value because you can get them to the table quicker or utilize them quicker. And I lose pops from the reserve deck. And I figure careful planning, I don't really need that for activation late in the game. So he has a 5, which is pretty good. So if he has a couple characters in his hand, he could do some damage. So he comes down with Bosk and Houndstooth, which means he can battle. He could take out both my pilots, but then his guy's going to die too. So he spends 8 force to deploy him, blocks the drain at 2, which, he probably didn't have anything else really worth doing. So, so I have Brown Birds. I tracked my 6 here that follow the legend that I know that it's here. So I'm going to be able to take out both characters since I think Major Turf in here is only forfeit 4, maybe 3. Yeah, 3 from Death Star 2. So that's tracking 101, everybody. You play a card, you know how many cards down it is. You go from there. And he, of course, knew that the 5 was there. So he's going to kill Braun Burrs, win the battle. But Braun Burrs accomplished his mission of getting rid of that drain for the rest of the game. I don't really know what my destiny here is, but all I need is a 1 because there's no immunity on the Bosk. And it's going to go away. And even if he draws a 5, I don't think that 1 card in his hand is like a potent starship that can draw Battle Destiny on its own and kick me out of space. So again, I just don't want him to be able to hang out there and reinforce it with like forfeit fodder, that type of thing. All right, so I just lose one of the pilots, had that back to tank ready, and now this looks pretty good for me. So he's at 11, I'm at 11. I'm forcing 3 damage, he's forcing 3 damage, but he's got an extra turn. But I found the Arcona, which is big. And this gives me an opportunity to plug. So the Kessling run, look for that on podcast. It's also on the forums, of course. Kessling, Kessling. Greg was featured in one of the episodes. I interviewed him about his many, many years playing this game. And of course, Greg had a pretty unfortunate experience with an Arcona in the World Championship final in 2002. The Arconas are pesky. I did not make any comments or jokes because I would have won if I was him. He's probably heard it like 100 times about the Arcona being a thorn in his side. All right, so again, this looks real close still, but the Arcona is real big because now I can just keep blocking that drain at 2, use the 1 force to move away. He moves to block, and he gets Warrant Officer McKay back here. So now he's threatening 2. I'm threatening 3. He's got an extra turn because he's dark side. And I'm going to lose a few force here. At this point, I'm not worried about him coming to space. He's got evacs. Battles my Arcona, makes me use the force. I did pretty well in this event. My one loss was against Wayne Cullen. And I was banking on a barrier, and he had, or maybe it's a trap. It's a trap or barrier, and he had, they're still coming through, which cancels it, and he just blew me out. So, in that case, like, if Greg had like a sense or something, he could just blow out and win the game. But that's like a risk I have to take. Of like, I can't. At that point, I couldn't afford to just trade damage because he was up on me a little bit. So I'm gonna battle here. And I draw my 6 again, which I keep tracking around. And I'm going to get rid of both of his characters. And he's going to get rid of one of my characters, because both my characters are at least 4/3. I'm just going to throw him in the back to tank. And as it stands now, I'm at 6 cards. He's at 5. I'm doing 3 damage. He's doing 1. Essentially, and I think that's where I went out, so I could speed it up. But this was a good game, back and forth. That's where every little card matters. Like this Vibroaxe that he deployed on Snuva, he probably wishes. I don't think that really had any value for him. I mean, he kind of had to know that it's a trap, which was kind of impossible. But even then, I think, like, what is it? I think it adds 1 to power, maybe. Yeah, so like, this was probably like a card you probably wish you'd rather just... It probably had more value to just throw away to a force drain. Alright, so that was another close game. Let's do switch sides here. Again, you know, hopefully this doesn't come across as rambling. Hopefully this comes across as, oh, I learned a couple things. Again, mostly gearing this towards new and returning players, and you have this handful of cards that you're just trying to win, and what strategies kind of come into play, and even pretty simple formats. So we see here, right off the bat, my opponent here, Phil, plays Throw Me Another Charge. And like these interrupts that are Destiny 5, Destiny 6 that you can cycle, they're most valuable late in the game when you could track them. Like, he just gave me a verify of his entire deck. Because, you know, this card's only purpose is to just cycle it and be a high Destiny. It's not, the actual functions on the card primarily aren't like, he's not looking for an automated weapon. So if I was him, I wouldn't have done that. I would have held on to this later in the game, used it at a time when I could track it, and also not give me, my opponent, as the opponent, all the information of, okay, what tricks does he have, or what things I have to be careful of. So now I've seen all but, you know, all but 7 cards that are in his deck. That's something I probably wouldn't have done if I was him. Alright, so I'm going to deploy my Battleground. Kashik's always good. 2 force versus 1, potential drain of 3, or 2. This is good that I have the Devastator, I got a Pilot, we're in attack position now. Defensive Fire, again, this card, you know, if I get like the one card, if the card's in the deck, it has some utility to him. So Defensive Fire just takes it away. And I think in one of the games I used that, and then I put a limited resources. My opponent knew that I had limited resources, but he didn't realize I had the Defensive Fire, I think. Or maybe he did, he couldn't do anything about it because it was just late in the game, but that's where it's a pretty cool combo. Alright, so we're both just slowly getting at locations, drawing. This card's kind of neat because it's a Destiny 5, and what you're basically doing is just exchanging a card. But like the first function you don't care about. But at any time you may place effect to retrieve 1 force. So that can be valuable, especially if you have a high Destiny card or if you have one card that you really like and you really want to retrieve it, you could potentially track it around, draw it, get it back on the table. But it's good if you have like a Destiny 5 or 6 that's on the top of your lost pile. You lose it, you retrieve it, you track it around, and again, like drawing a 6 in a certain circumstance versus a 3 could swing the game in this format, and in other formats too, but especially this format, because you know a lot of the characters don't have huge forfeits. You don't have all the supplementary helper cards like Imperial Rest Order. Not everyone does, at least. Some people do, some people don't. Or like, do they have code clearance? You don't have a lot of mains that have heavy, 7, 8, 9 forfeit each. So I'm just gonna get Devastator, and I just want to. He's got Star Destroyer. It's fun to play, but again, he knows he could track it down, but it's gonna take a couple turns, several turns actually. But he knows now the Star Destroyer is gonna be the bottom card of my reserve deck. But if he shuffles, of course, then he doesn't. So I put Devastator out. I put the Admiral's Order out, which makes all pilots deploy -1, -2 if an Admiral. So each of my pilots now. So now I have 2 pilots. Galad Pelion adds 2 to forfeit. So now this is from Series 1. I didn't have Imperial Rest Order at this point. So this guy, Helbsley, is forfeit 5. Pelion's 5. So even if he comes down and draws a High Destiny, I don't lose my ship. I don't want to lose my ship and get set all the way behind. He puts Obi-Wan out, and now we're both threatening drains of 2. He's got a healthier hand than I do. We have the same amount of cards face down. I'm activating a little bit more. These are like the things that if you're a new player, or any player really, you're just constantly checking. How much am I activating? How much are in my hands? How much are face down? How much damage am I threatening? All those types of things. What am I going to do this turn? So this turn I just figure I don't really have enough to like kind of put two characters together. So let me just draw. So and save enough force. Kind of plan on my next turn of I'm going to put, so I can just play the shield at any time, even without the starting effect. Something I learned kind of recently, or kind of, I probably knew it at one point, but you could just play shields at any time, and you could use them. And a grabber is always good, because you can take a card away from your opponent, make sure that they don't cycle a High Destiny card, like throw me another charge, for example. And he's now reinforcing this site to try to get his 2 damage through. And I have my 2 damage. This card I think I took out, once per game opponent may choose you activate 4, they activate 2, or you retrieve 3. Like, the opponent's never going to let you retrieve 3 4s. So they're going to do the activate. So it actually might be kind of good, because even though the wording of the card is not very clear, but like, it says up to 4, up to 2, but I think it like forces them. Because I think it's basically saying you activate it if you have it, as opposed to like you make a decision how much do you want to activate. So I'm going to put a couple Destroyer Droids here. Or no, I take that back. I'm just going to move my P60 in the war room. Threaten a drain of 1. Yeah, he can kind of hold his own. Can soak. When people use the term like soak, that's like power plus forfeit. So he's got soak 7. He doesn't draw Battle Destiny, but he can shoot and cause force loss. My opponent's only activating 6 force, so I'm not too worried about what they can come down with and overflow me here with lots of strong characters. So he comes down with Biggs and General Rican. So, alright, P60 is probably going to die, but I forced him now to dedicate 2 cards. He's probably going to lose a force here when I hit. And that was his turn. So, like, he basically burned the entire turn. So that has value. I used, like half of my turn, spending the 4, moving over, burnt a card. But now those are 2 characters he put there that aren't going anywhere else. So it's like all these kind of economics of the game are kind of important to constantly be measuring. But, I mean, this actually backfired pretty bad. So I don't know if he tracked that fully around, but now he overflows me for a lot of force. So I got to lose P60 and 5 more? Yeah, he's only forfeit 4. So that's bad. So yeah, so that was me being a little overly aggressive. So whatever I just said there about this being a good play for me, I take it back, because now I remember, oof. So I'm now at 13 and 720, and he's at 27, so he's up. He's up here. So I don't know if Phil's going to watch this, but I wonder, I'm pretty sure I win this. Yeah, my only loss was to Wayne. So let's see what happens here. This might be my very first game, because I took this card out too. This card isn't going to do much. Alright, so I'm going to go here so he can't set up, because this is a drain 2 location, which are very valuable in this format. And this guy draws 2 Battle Destiny with another Battle Droid. So now he's with another Battle Droid. Opponent spies and smugglers are deployed +4, which basically means they're like not coming out. Is it just same or adjacent? Just same. And may not apply ability to Battle Destiny. So I'm losing a couple cards. This is looking pretty good for him. He's got more. He's got the Baragwen, so he can now retrieve. I think it's once per turn. If top card of your lost pile is a weapon or device, may use 1 force to retrieve it. So he gets back the blaster. Weapons in this format generally aren't good because if they don't, unless they make the character forfeit 0, they're not really that good because you don't really have the factors of like immunity to attrition or pretty much any characters. If you're just hitting a character, like the character's probably going to die anyway to attrition, so it doesn't really do much. It's not generally not worth the slot. So, that's right. This is how this game ended. Okay, so yeah, so like I said, so he's at 24. I'm at 16. He's doing 2 damage. I'm doing 2 damage. He's got this Baragwen retrieving. He puts the Arcona here, and he's blocking my drain here. But this guy right here, game winner, Lieutenant Arnett. Opponent may not react to or from same site. So he is basically a hard counter to the Arcona. So that's where this game basically ends, is that I just don't allow him to do that and I overflow Mr. Arcona. Because, and then, it makes sense. Like, he doesn't have to. There are a couple counters. There's not a lot counters to Arcona in this format. But if he just holds the Arcona and just says, hey, I'm up in hand in life, I'm just going to keep doing 2. He's going to do 2. I think even if I was doing 1 here, I don't think it was worth it. I think he still might be able to win. Because, 22, 23. He's out damaging me. I'm out. What was it? I would be out damaging him by 1. But his gap is big enough that it doesn't matter. I'm going to die probably. Or at the very least, get to a point where he could do something about it. He could do a part to stifle kind of the trend if I do start coming back, put it that way. Alright, so first strike also just going to get us swing. I retrieve a card, he loses a card. And Arcona cannot react. So he's going to end up peeling a lot here because I got 2 Battle Destiny too. So he could play this card, peek at the top card of Force Pile, but because he had to spend a Force because of first strike, opponent must first play an Interrupt. This is basically no Force Pile, so it fails. I just grab it with my grabber just because it's taking away a card, which is a tactic you'll see a lot. It's basically like it's a used Interrupt, so I don't want to, at this point, there's probably not going to be a lot of interrupts he's going to abuse. So I might as well just take the card out of his life force and not let him have it. I already have the grabber on the table. I draw 3/3, which is not great, but not bad. It's actually pretty good in this format to get. If I'd be happy with 3s for Battle Destiny usually. 5s or 6s can really swing the game, but he now has 13 battle damage, and he peels it all, which leaves him with 7. So now the math favors me, where it's at, what is that, 9 and 6 is 15 to 7. So now I'm up like double, and I'm threatening 3, he's threatening 2, plus he's got the Baragwen. But yeah, basically Lieutenant Arnett saved my bacon in this game, as the phrase goes. Alright, so what are we at? About 50 minutes. Yeah, so as this game winds down, all Jedi is really cool. I recommend signing up for it. When you see the leagues, they're usually just like jump gold. Some of the geographic leagues, like this one for Coruscant, we do a league. There's one going on right now for Online Play Week. I think they're good, they're fun. You build the deck. I mean, sometimes people open up all their packs and they really think they're bad and they don't play at all, which, yeah, I kind of like the fact that the games are quick. You get a lot in and learn a bunch, and it's just like the simple economics of the game of, does this make sense? Is this going to pay off? Is this worth using this card in the long run? Is this card worth including? How do I respond to my opponent who's now ahead in the arms race? Not arms race, but in the damage race, I should say. All those types of things that are skills that come up when the game gets more complex and when cards get more involved too. So yeah, I think it's a good baseline. It's really good for new returning players. If you're someone who played like old school, you might be a bunch of cards you still don't recognize and it might not be the best place to start, but I think it is. Actually, I think it is good. It's a good way to learn to decipher cards, which again are the majority of the cards that are in open format. If that's ultimately where you want to end up, if not, that's totally cool too. Everyone should play whatever they like. But I really like this format. I think it's done a lot of good things for the community and the game, and some people are really enthusiastic about it. I had a couple of people reach out to me and just be like, "Hey, can I join your course on all the Jedi League?" Even though they live in like California, and it's like, well, it's not really like the spirit of the league. The league is supposed to be like, "Hey, join, play 5 events." But if you really want to, like, we can. But there's probably better opportunities, and there is all the Jedi leagues that there's always like one active. So unless you max out your games, you should be able to play. All right, so thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this entertained some people. Hopefully this taught a few things. But yeah, that's the ultimate goal here, just to try to train people. I'll put this in the tutorial section on the YouTube channel. And yeah, may the force be with you. StarWarsCCG.org. And this is GEMP again. This online platform, play.starwarsccg.org. All right, take care. Bye.